Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the AAS Publishing and this series on teaching online tools and tips. And of course, I'm honored to have Chris Impey, University of Arizona, with us today. Hey, Chris.
Hey.
You lost your background.
Yeah, I lost my nice background. I have a messy background. I'll try and get a nice astronomical curtain to shroud myself.
You know, they have those, Zoom background things you can put up.
Yeah.
Make yourself, but then you kind of, float in and out of your background. So my background is still the same. It's still got the blue going here. So what we want to talk about today is an important issue, the issue of accessibility for your online teaching. And so we'll be covering several topics within accessibility. And a lot of it boils down to the concept, the ideal concept of a universal design. That means you want to not just design the pedagogy for your course to the average student, but you want to design for potential students who have a wide range of abilities, disabilities, learning styles, learning modalities, native languages, and other kinds of characteristics. So we'll be talking about some of the things that you can do, whether you're taking your online course, online in a hurry, or whether you've been at it for a little bit and want to spruce up some stuff with regard to universal design and accessibility. So, Chris,
and the general, framing here is, it sounds like some special topic or category, but it should be a product of just good instructional design in general, because, regardless of who you're thinking about, you may have an archetypal student in mind, but, all of you and us who've taught big classes know that the range of individuals there is quite remarkable. And so it's not just the, most obvious situations where someone might be disadvantaged if you taught in a particular way. And many people who teach face-to-face are used to the fact that some of their students may need note takers. They're used to the fact that, some students are challenged to visually or auditorily, or just they're not going to accept all the modes of input for your information that a normal, that a sort of abled student, if you like, might. So these are standard issues of design. They get a little more pointed online because you can just disenfranchise a person or a population if you don't sort of get it right. In the face-to-face classroom, you have the ability to adapt and alter your path, more in real time. But once you've set up your course online, if it's not built with accessibility in mind, then you're sort of facing a problem as you start rolling. There's a set of topics. I was just going to mention the one I know more about initially, or just have where actually some of the heavy lifting is probably done for you, which is video. So online courses are often centered on video lectures. And if you're using Panopta or one of these, university supported large scale systems, it's going to do the captions, the closed captions for you. And it's going to do a pretty good job. You won't need to micromanage that. So that's a piece of it that is usually handled by your instructional center who's putting the video lectures online. If you're if you're out on YouTube, closed captioning is remarkable. I've seen it do live sessions like we're doing in real time, and just almost amazed at how good it is. How it's not stumbling over words. It's pretty much parsing everything correctly. And if you think about it, YouTube, there's probably 10 million minutes of video added every hour. So if they couldn't keep up with that, they'd be in trouble.
Lots of practice.
So closed captioning is probably the least of the issues. And then there are also tools, again, Panopta would have it, and YouTube has it, but it's a sort of an add-on to generate scripts, or transcripts rather, from the video that's all the lectures, say. And then, of course, there are very standard text reading plugins for browser or for people's operating system, where the student could have that information read to them. So those are pretty much standard tools, but you should just know whether or not they're available to you, whether they're being used and whether they are available.
Yeah, the other one I mentioned on videos is getting a rip of the audio only. If you're doing something on YouTube, that's generally available as part of the package. And if you have a disability resource center, you should certainly work with those folks. In fact, they'll probably reach out and get in touch with you before you get in touch with them. But providing audio only is a very good option, another option for your videos. Textbooks, let me talk a little bit about that. You do want to select your textbooks and reading materials several weeks in advance, particularly those with disability resource centers, because there are going to be some students that may require Braille or large print or specific image or audio formats. And so you want to give them as much time as possible to be able to convert your reading materials over into these other formats that don't necessarily have something like a YouTube, just click and you get Braille all of a sudden. So that's still a little bit more of a hands-on process. So you want to give give the folks trying to help you do a better job on accessibility as much time as possible.
And the textbook publishers have gone up their own sensitivity and learning curve on this in the past decade or so. So luckily you don't have to worry about it. I mean, you go to one of the main sources of textbooks in astronomy, and all the main players will be able to deliver the materials that way. You don't have to do it. You don't have to figure it out. Your DRC, your Disability Resource Center, will know how to do that as long as you have your materials available well ahead of time.
Two other ones, kind of related to each other, which is presentations and then PDFs. On your presentations, particularly if you're showing images, you want to be able to leverage giving an alt tag or an image description of what is in there. This is available both in the Keynote, it's available in PowerPoint, and it allows you to describe in enough detail what the image is showing. So don't just say it's an image. Oh, okay, right? Describe what's in the image if you're trying to make an astronomy point, so that people who might be on screen readers or have other disabilities will be able to tell what is in the image without necessarily seeing the image. And we do the same thing. So I'll just, since we're double-edged journals here, I'll say it, right? So we do the same thing on the journals. Like if you're doing a video or something and you're putting a caption from that video in there, there needs to be enough description about what this still from the image is about and what the video is about. So it's about being more verbose, more descriptive about your image and movies that are embedded within your PowerPoints or your keynotes or your double-edged journal article.
Right. And sometimes it's information it's easy to get. I mean, again, in the textbook arena, where if say you're embedding graphics or figures from the textbook in a presentation, the captions are available to you, so you should use them in your presentation as well. Don't just assume, oh, they're going to have the textbook somewhere, so I don't need to put it into my presentation. So it's easy enough. So you should just put it in there. And where astronomers are lucky, if a lot of people who teach make use of APOD, and APOD has an astronomy picture, they have great self-contained captions, one paragraph, whatever. Again, you don't have to muddy up your PowerPoint with them, but that information could be there in the
tag. Yep. And the same thing holds true for PDF. Sometimes you'll make a PDF. You want to be able to describe your links within that PDF. Don't just say, click here. Right? Click here doesn't tell anybody anything if you're using a screen reader. You do want to make sure your PDFs are screen readable. And so the easiest test for that is if you can highlight text, it's going to be screen readable, which generally means it's a vector format. If you cannot highlight the text in your PDF, that will not be screen readable and is generally not accessible. So just do that little test and make sure that the PDFs that you might be handing out or posting out can be highlighted.
Right.
And sort of a global one, and I'll deal with it because we do deal with it in the journals quite a bit, no matter what your medium is, whether it's videos or PDFs or websites, is to be aware of color blindness. most common kind being red-green. So oftentimes we will get in the journals or on websites, you'll see things that use red-green as the color discriminant, and that's a very poor choice. I forget what the percentage is right off the top of my head, but it's larger than you might imagine, people who have red-green being able to distinguish those two. So you want to use things like line types, solid, dashed, broken lines. There's also plenty of sites out there available on palettes, color palettes for color blindness that will help you choose a set of colors in addition to line types that will help accessibility, reaching a broader audience for your images in the class.
And then this is another area where your DRC or Disability Resource Center is valuable because, you know, both your own teaching website may be internal to your CMS, but if you may have an external teaching website, and your teaching website may link to other external sites and so on. Your DRC, you know, even you can find these tools are open source and available for just pointing a random website and seeing whether it passes muster according to the sort of national standard for accessibility. But your DRC does this all the time across all disciplines. So if you have a set of links or websites, including your own one and maybe others that you link to that you expect your students to visit, again, give them a little heads up and they can run the tool and you know, get the metric of accessibility for these websites and tell you if they see any serious issues. And for those external sites that you reference, it may be tricky. You may have to decide whether you're better off not using them.
Yeah, and if you are using like websites in your class, if you're designing your own website or you have something within Canvas, for example, you want to simplify your tables, right? Because when a screen reader comes along, it reads each cell, you know, from left to right, top to bottom. And so if you do things like tables within tables, or you have a lot of table structure, those screen readers can have a very hard time reading it. So you want to keep your table structures in your Canvas website or HTML if you happen to be doing your own, as simple as possible. So keep that in mind as you design your Canvas tables or website tables. Also on websites, you want to keep your technology in the middle. You don't want to use some fancy new thing that was just approved by the Web Consortium 2 years ago and it's supported by 1 or 2 browsers. Maybe a really nifty feature, but odds on most of your students aren't going to have that or they won't be using those kind of browsers. So you want to really aim your technology in the well-tested middle.
Right. And that can even apply to things that are pretty ubiquitous. I mean, I'll use it as the example because it's now in the rearview mirror as a one of the standard web technologies, but Flash is a great example of that.
Yes.
And Flash is now, it's Adobe and it's sort of not, people are HTML5 are doing it all sorts of different ways. But, you know, a Flash object or element on a web page or a document is completely opaque to any of these, you know, reading or parsing technologies. So it might as well be a cipher to a screen reader.
What was another one? Shockwave was another one that was popular.
Right.
Now you don't see that anymore. But if you go out there and you look for like online materials, some of the stuff is kind of dated, and it will be in Java or a Shockwave or something like that. So try to avoid those because a lot of students' web browsers won't support it, or you're going to have to require them to download stuff in the background that may not be so great. So try to avoid that stuff. Speaking of, another accessibility issue is considerations of internet bandwidth, right? Not everybody is gonna have the type of internet that you may have at your institution. So let's say gigabit internet delivered right to your door. And on the other hand, in the other extreme, probably nobody still has a 16K baud phone modem, right? So you don't have to design for the slowest possible that anybody may have, but on the other hand, you shouldn't assume, you know, everybody's got an amazing internet connection at home because we are all at home these days. So again, kind of in the middle, sort of what is the the median broadband speed is where you want to do. And be aware, like when you put in your images, know how big your images are when you're putting them in your presentation, right? You shouldn't be putting in 10 megabyte images when you can slim it down to less than 100K or so. So just be aware of the size of your presentations, your PDFs, the images that you're putting in.
Yeah, unless you're working in some native 4K environment, any full screen image should not be more than a couple of megabytes. So that's sort of in your head the maximum number. And we know this matters because we have, if you download the full res Hubble ultra deep field image, it's a few hundred megabytes. So it's wonderful, amazing image, but not so useful. So yeah, that's a pacing item. I don't think you need to worry about the video so much, just because all the streaming mechanisms are buffering now so cleverly that I don't think most students are going to have trouble with their video lectures. I mean, the world is just set up for people binging on Netflix and so on. So if they have broadband at all, it doesn't have to be gigabit. It can be factors down from that. Then you would have to put in something particularly that would tax them.
Yeah. Anything else you think of to cover under the accessibility universal design banner? We've got some of the technologies.
I think these are the main issues. And again, your university resource centers are your friends in this, because they have to, it's their job to think about it. You may have it as a little part-time hat you now have to put on, or have to be a little more aware of as you're online. But they're doing it all the time, again, across disciplines and in fields like engineering or architecture, where there are big, complex, beefy objects, and where these accessibility issues are maybe even worse than astronomy. So I don't think astronomy professors are going to be the pacing. You're not going to tax the system as far as your university is concerned.
Certainly. Cool. Well, that'll do for today. Chris, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your thoughts.
Sure.
And thank you, everyone. And we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.